Okay, so this is a page of subtraction problems, and we start these just like we do addition problems, making sure we've got common denominators, and the big difference is we're subtracting instead of adding. So I'm going to start with this first one, 8 4/5, 1 2/5, we're subtracting. So I see I have fifths on both of them. Yay, I don't have to do common denominators. I do have to take 4 minus 2. So 4 minus 2 is how much? 2. So that's 2/5. And then I'm going to take 8 minus 1, which is 7. So that was pretty straightforward. 2/5 doesn't reduce. We're all good. Now, unfortunately, they're not all going to be that easy. Let's take a look at the second one. I have 9 2/3, 7 1/2. I've got thirds and halves. Raise your hand if you know what the common denominator would be. Brian, go ahead.
On top, you got to do multiplying by 2.
Multiply by 2. Very good.
Bottom, multiply by 3.
Multiply by 3. So that's going to give us a common denominator of 6. And I like to rewrite it. So this would be 9 4/6 minus 7 3/6. Very good. So now I can subtract the fractions. They have common denominators. So 4/6 minus 3/6 is 1/6. 9 minus 7 is 2. Do I need to reduce anything? No, because that's 1. So that's going to be my answer. I'm just going to box it and go, yay, that was easy, and go on to the next one. So the next one, if I look at my fractions, I have tenths and 15ths. Now, we could multiply those together and use 150, but I will tell you, you'll have to do a lot of reducing, a lot of simplifying on those fractions at the ends. So instead, I'm going to do some multiples out here. So I'm going to do my tens. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. I think that's enough. And then I'm going to do my 15s. 15, 30, 45, 60. Oh, I didn't need to go that far, did I? Because 30 pops up really quickly. If you go through and do your multiples of both numbers and find the smallest one, you will have the least amount of reducing to do on your answer, which is going to help a lot of you out. So notice that this is the third number in this list, 1, 2, 3. That means it's 10 times 3. And 15 is the second number here. That means this is going to be 15 times 2. So if you write this out, you can get all kinds of information. So I'm going to rewrite this as 7, and then 9 times 3 is 27, and then we were getting 30ths. And then I'm going to subtract 3, and then 1 times 2 is 2. 15 times 2 is 30. Hopefully we got 30 on both of those. If not, then we messed up the math somewhere. Okay, so finding the common denominators is probably the most difficult. Well, there's some other things that'll be tricky, but for this example, that's the hardest part. So we're going to take 27 minus 2. So 27, 26, 25 would be 25 30ths, and then 7 minus 3 is 4. So I think we're going to have to reduce this one. 25 and 30, what will they both divide by? 5. So I'm going to do that really quick. Divided by 5, divided by 5. So we get 4 and 5/6. So lots of little details. You've got to have common denominators on the beginning, subtract the different pieces, make sure your answer is reduced. You're not going to get a lot of improper fractions that you have to worry about with subtraction like you would with addition, so that's a nice little piece. What we will have, though, is some fractions where we have to borrow. Okay, so over here, I just have 6 on the top. I'm subtracting 2 3/4. So when I borrow from the 6 and make this 5, I'm replacing it with a 1, but that doesn't work because it doesn't have a common denominator with fourths. So I want to think about this. This would be a good time to show you the tiles really quick. So really quick, I want you to grab the big 1 tile, okay? And then I want you to grab your fourths. And I know you guys know that there's 4/4 in 1, but I want you to see it, okay? So if I take a 1 and I'm changing it to fourths, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. Does everybody see that 4/4 is the same thing as 1? Yes. Okay, so set those aside. So I gave you permission to touch them for a couple minutes, and now we're going to stick them back over. You don't have to put them all back in the thing yet, but I wanted you to see that. So when I'm replacing this with 1, and I'm changing this so they have common denominators, I'm going to make this 5 and 4/4. You could also think about this 1 as being 1/1, and you're multiplying by 4, if you just want to stay with the common denominator theme. But I want you to think about, to get a whole, the top and bottom number have to be the same. That way we'll have common denominators. All right? So now I've set it up. Now I have something to subtract 3/4 from. The biggest mistake people make is when there's nothing up here, they just write down 3/4. That works for adding, does not work for subtracting. We have to borrow. There has to be something to subtract from. So 4/4 minus 3/4 is just 1/4. 5 minus 2 is just 3. So when you're subtracting, you have to have something to subtract from on the top. That is a key idea. That is where most people make their mistakes. That's why on the adding, I was sort of replacing it with something too. So you're thinking about there's always something there. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing on the next one. So I have to, there's nothing here to subtract 3/8 from. If I'm subtracting, I have to have something to subtract from. So I'm going to borrow from the 5 and make it 4. And then how many eighths would add up to 1? Because I'm putting a 1 over here. 8. And you could do that with the tiles, but I think after seeing it once, you guys are kind of like, oh yeah, I remember that if I have the same number on the top and bottom, that makes 1. So I'm going to make that into 8/8. Okay, and I'm subtracting 2 and 3/8. All right, so 8 minus 3 is 5, 5/8. 4 minus 2 is 2. So once you get all the borrowing and common denominator stuff out of the way, you're just doing what we did at the top, subtracting the fractions, subtracting the whole numbers, and then simplifying if you can. All right, so there's one more of these. This is such a big idea that I put 3 of them on here. So I have 8, and I'm subtracting 2/3. So there's nothing here to subtract the thirds from, so I have to cancel the 8, make it 7, and then I'm putting a 1 over here. So if I change 1 into thirds, how many thirds make 1? 3/3. The top and bottom number are going to be the same. Or you can think of this as 1/1, and you're just multiplying it. I'll do it this way. 1/1, and you're multiplying them both by 3. Whichever idea sticks in your brain, just so you know what you have to put over here. And then we're subtracting 2/3. So 3 minus 2 is just 1, 1/3. And then 7 minus nothing is 7. So if you want to put a 0 in there, just to think about that, it's 7 minus 0. When I have all the spaces filled in, you can. It's okay to take something on the top minus nothing, not so much to take nothing minus something. It's kind of an interesting concept. All right, so we are almost done with this. We're going to do a couple more examples with borrowing that are a little bit different, and then we'll look at the story problems. Did you need that for just another second? Okay. Yes. Yes. Okay. So the last row I think is the most complicated because we have fractions here. You'll just see here in a second. So on this first one, I have 1/2 and I have 3/4. So I have 2, I have 4. Raise your hand if you can tell me what we're going to do. Brian, go ahead.
In top, you have to multiply by 2.
Good. We have to multiply the top by 2 so that it'll have 4 on the bottom, right? So this will be 15 and 2/4. And we're subtracting 8 and 3/4. Does anybody see a problem with the fractions? What's the problem? Explain it to me.
3 on the bottom is bigger.
Yeah, I can't take 2 minus 3. I mean, we have talked about negatives, but that's not what's in this lesson. We want to keep everything nice, whole, positive numbers. So 2 is not big enough to subtract 3. So it means I'm going to go over here to the 5, and I'm going to borrow and make that 4. Okay? And I'm going to add 1 to 2/4. But wait a second.
You get 6/4.
So that 1 is actually going to be 4/4. So instead of writing plus 1, I'm going to write plus 4/4. Okay? Do you guys want me to do that in 2 steps? I can do it in 2 steps. So I'm adding 1. So I'm borrowing from the 5 to make it 4, and I'm adding 1 to this. That's just like we do with decimals, right? So let me rewrite it down here. So I've got 4 and 2/4, and then how do I write 1 as fourths? We actually did that right up here. It would be 4/4. So I'm actually adding 4/4 to that.
You take off the 1, and then that 1 acts as a whole number.
That's a whole number, which becomes 4/4. So that's going to change to 4 and 6/4. It's improper. We want it to be. And then the poor bottom's just sitting down there waiting. And this is 14. I wrote down 4. I meant to write 14. Don't make that mistake. And then we're subtracting 8 and 3/4. So 6/4 minus 3/4 is 3/4. 14 minus 8 is 6. And we end up with 6 and 3/4.
I got 6 and a half.
So 6 minus 3 is 3. 3/4 is not a half. So I would check out. If you're working ahead of where I'm at, it's good to try to still follow along, so that you don't get lost.
6/4 minus 3/4. Yeah.
6 minus 3 is 3. And then the 4 just stays 4. 3/4 doesn't reduce.
Oh.
Okay, so we're going to do one more of these, and then we'll look at the story problem. So I have 8 and 2/3. We're subtracting 3/4. So I have thirds and I have fourths. So raise your hand if you know what my common denominator is going to be. Johnny. Or you can just tell me what to do.
Multiply the 3 by
Good. We're going to multiply the 3 by 4 and the 4 by 3. And what do we get when we take 4 times 3? 12. Good. So this is going to be 8 and 8/12. And we're subtracting 3 times 3 is 9/12. Darn it, because I can't do 8 minus 9. It's not big enough. Sometimes people turn it around in their heads and put down 1. You can't do that. You can't have 8 and take away 9. So we're going to borrow from the 7. I'm sorry, from the 8 and make it 7. My brain jumped ahead a step. And we're going to add 1 over here. So let's think about what that would look like. So I now have 7 and 8/12. How many 12ths would make a whole? Go ahead, Jaden. Are we,
Stretching.
Oh, you're just stretching? Then it's got it, 12/12. So I'm actually adding 12/12. This 1 is 12/12. That's a whole. Okay? So let's go ahead and put all that together before we subtract. So 8/12, 8 plus 12 is how much? 20. So that's going to be 20/12. And now I can finally subtract my 9/12. Whew! Takes a little bit of work. So 20 minus 9 is 11. So 11/12. And then you could put a 0 here as a placeholder if you want. 7 minus 0 is 7. And 11/12 does not reduce. So that's the end of that one. So box off the last one. Box off the last one. It won't if you do the least common denominator. But box that one off for a second. We're going to leave that one over there. Okay? Okay, so let's go down to the bottom and look at the story problem. Bridget just bought a new lamp for her bedside table. The old lamp was 1 3/5 feet tall, and the new lamp is 4 1/3 feet tall.
I thought it said 41.
I know, it's because I didn't have the fraction thing. So this is 4 1/3 like this, and this is 1 3/5. It's just the problem of typing fractions. Sometimes it doesn't work well. How much taller is the new lamp than the old lamp? So you could draw a picture for this. The new lamp is taller, so I'm going to draw a really tall lamp I'll make a lampshade. It looks more like a rocket or an arrow, but whatever. So pretend that's a lamp. And this one is 4 1/3 feet. That's a pretty tall lamp. The old one was really short. I'm going to draw it really short. It was only 1 3/5. So you can see I don't really need a good picture to figure out. They're wanting to know how much taller the new lamp is from this other lamp. So they're wanting to know like what this difference is. So when you see things like how much taller, how much more, how much is left over, those are keywords that mean to subtract. Okay, because we're looking for this difference. Difference means subtract. So we're going to take 4 1/3 and subtract 1 3/5. All right, so common denominator for 3 and 5, what are we going to do? 15. So I'm going to take this times 5. I'm going to take this times 3. So I'm going to get 4 5/15 minus 1 9/15. So when I look at the fractions, 5 minus 9 isn't going to work. So what do? Borrow from the 4. We're going to make that 3. And then I'm going to add 1 to this fraction. So what that's actually going to look like is I'm going to have 3, don't forget your whole number, 3 5/15 plus, how many 15ths make a whole? 15. So I'm going to add 15 15ths. And then I'm going to subtract 1. All right, let's do that part first. I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. So let's just figure that part out. So that's going to be 3 20/15. That's improper, but that's what happens when you borrow. That is okay. And we're going to subtract the 1 9/15. So 20 minus 9 is how much? 11. So 11/15. And 3 minus 1 is 2. Do I need to reduce anything? No. Okay. So we are about out of time.
Can you stay on that one, please?
Yep, I'll leave that up there. Tomorrow, the first part of class, we are going to be sending off people to state. So don't move yet. I know it's about time to go. We're going to do the practice problems tomorrow when we get back from that. Just to kind of make sure we've got it down. I'm going to give you guys this assignment.
Yeah, I was just saying that it would take a little while.
How about you do it at
That's all I was saying.
You might be able to do it during advisory
I was only
today.
saying that
Okay, guys, so we are out of time. That means I am giving you some homework. I apologize for that, but it's just because we're at the end of the year, and I'm already going to lose probably half of our class tomorrow. So I can't get this off. Okay, so do this as homework. There's only 10 problems. They're not that bad. Okay? Shh. And what I need you to do before you go is put the little tiles and the thing back in your bags. If you don't have a bag, just leave it sitting there and I will bag it. So if I gave you a bag and yours was already taken apart, you can just stick it back in the bag. If not, I need to put them in bags now. So I'll grab bags. I need to put those in.
Here we go.
Yeah, once you have, okay, make sure you pick up your trash and everything and then you can go. Rylan and Sam, that is not acceptable at school. Mostly Rylan, I didn't see Sam. Were you doing something then? You guys can't play like that. You guys can't play like that when you're in the building. So Rylan, you're coming over. I'm gonna bag these.
Are these fractions? Oh my gosh. That is like really.
I just need a $5
Oh, I'm just gonna start stacking them right there. Thank you guys. Sorry, we're kind of running out of time. Oh, here, I'll just do it really quick.
Download.
You got your homework done, right?
Yeah.
Replay.
Play what? Horizon.
There you go.
Hot Wheels.
I bought their thing with Blizzard Mountain.
Rylan?
Hot Wheels.
Rylan, I need your paper.
Oh, play for that.
That thing I keep forgetting to sign.
Rainbow fraction decimal tile.
Get your homework turned in today.
I should actually use this because I don't know how to do
Do you need it? You have a bag, right? Okay. Stick it in the bag. No, do not take it in the bag. It's okay. So that's why they have a bag. I go to unlock my iPad, right?
Right.
AJ,
What is this you want to show me?
AJ, Adrian, whatever I'm supposed to call you.
Why is everyone calling me
Gabe
AJ?
Murphy. I always want to do that scene from Rocky. Adrian.
Oh, yeah.
You probably get that a lot, don't you?
I do. Mr. Moore.
It's because it's such a good movie.
I'm awesome. But my worksheet.
Hey, Mom, I need one around. Did Mom call
I'll get it. Just hang on. I'm like trying to get stuff put away. For you. Dang it! Okay, so
Sam left the
oh
water.
my god, I'm so proud of you!
Go to the trash
I
can.
got C.
Who's this?
Oh, all the brains. Okay.
What are you stabbing
Rex. Rex
A
is the only
pencil.
one sitting there.
It went into my kidney.
It was an
Maybe it's
eraser.
Sam's. I don't know.
Then will you give this to Sam?
Here's a pencil. Hey.
I'll give it to
Oh, I threw you a pencil. Whatever.
So you feel hot stuff.
You like that?
Alright.
It's turquoise and a orange.
Oh, I still have 2 minutes. I'm like rushing, thinking I'm really behind.
No, the thing is, I have lots of Clement. They're cute. They're cuties.
Slap you in the air. That'd be horrible.
I'm not done yet. Someone needs it like that. Go ahead.
What's your problem? You're so like angry this morning.
I was like that yesterday.
Like you almost hit
You're
me.
like getting really bad sleep.
I'm doing better today. I'm not quite as angry.
I was angry yesterday.
We all have those days.
Yesterday when I was trying to my presentation number because it sucked, and everyone was like talking when I was presenting. I'm like, dude, this sucks anyway. So reading stuff in Spanish out loud.
Now you guys know how I feel all the time.
Yeah, but it's like reading in Spanish because it's like yeah.
Like anytime people try to talk when somebody else like has the floor, it's just like aggravating.
Oh!
Because like Spanish presentations suck.
Oh shoot.